Hey guys, welcome back. We are going to start with Unit 5 this semester, which is going to cover agriculture. Agriculture is chapters 12, 13, and 14 in your AMSCO textbooks. Today we're going to cover chapter 12, which is the development of agriculture. So this chapter's essential question is how has the development of agriculture affected the spatial distribution of people? Meaning, how has where we can grow food affected where humans live on this planet? And trust me, there is nothing that has affected where we live more than agriculture. By the end of this unit, you will understand that the development of agriculture led to a widespread alteration of the natural environment. Also, major agricultural regions reflect physical geography and economic forces. Settlement patterns and rural land use are reflected in the cultural landscape, and that changes in food production and consumption present challenges and opportunities. By the end of this section, you'll be able to identify major centers of domestication of plants and animals and patterns of diffusion in the first agricultural revolution, which is also known as the Neolithic Revolution. These early hearths of domestication of plants and animals include the most important, which is Southwest Asia, which is known as the Fertile Crescent or the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and the Americas. We're also going to learn how patterns of diffusion resulted in the globalization of various plants and animals. There have been three major breakthroughs when it comes to agriculture, and we call these agricultural revolutions. So there's the first agricultural revolution, which is known as the Neolithic Revolution, the second agricultural revolution, and the third agricultural revolution, which is also known as the Green Revolution. And you are definitely going to need to know the time period of each of these, as well as what they entail. The first agricultural revolution is when humans learned how to domesticate plants and animals. This happened originally about 10,000 years ago. So the original hearth of agriculture was the Fertile Crescent or the Middle East or Southwest Asia. All three of those things mean the same place. 10,000 years ago, the very first humans went from being hunter gatherers to actually planting plants and staying in one place. That's what the first agricultural revolution is. So, what it means to domesticate a plant or an animal is that you take something from the wild, so there was already wheat growing in the Middle East, but humans then take that wild wheat and they make it more of what they want it to be. So what that means is that they determine where it's going to grow by planting it in places, but they also actually genetically change the wheat by selectively breeding. So they take the largest ears of wheat from that year's crop, and instead of eating them, they save those seeds, and that's what they plant the next year. So next year's crop is even bigger and better. And this is what domestication is. We do the exact same thing with animals as well, just a little bit later, where we take, let's say, if we want a sheep for wool, we breed the fluffiest of the sheep so that their babies are even fluffier. That is what domestication means. So again, this first agricultural revolution is when we go from being hunter-gatherers to farmers. And make sure you understand this map because you need to know what the first agricultural revolution is, when it happened, again about 10,000 years ago, and also where it happened. So it happens in these independent places. So we said the first place was the Middle East with things like wheat and barley. We also see Southeast Asia with rice. We see Sub-Saharan Africa with things like millet and sorghum. We see Central America with plants like maize. Now, these are not random. Maize, millet, sorghum, rice, wheat, all of these are really a same type of crop, which is known as a cereal grain or a cereal grass. And these are still to this day the most important types of crops for human civilization. There would be no civilization without the domestication of these cereal grasses. So here is a great chart that shows what crops were domesticated and where they were domesticated during the first agricultural revolution, again, also known as the Neolithic Revolution. So you do need to know when and where these things take place. So as we said, different crops were domesticated in different places because that's where they were growing wild. Before Christopher Columbus, for example, in the Columbian Exchange, there was no ears of wheat or rice here in the Americas at all. Those things were brought over by the European colonists and also the African slaves. So it's trade through these different networks like the Silk Road, and the Columbian Exchange that has made it possible for us to have the diets that we do today with this various mixture of these different crops. By the end of this next section, you'll be able to explain the connection between physical geography and agricultural practices. Agricultural regions are influenced by the natural environment. We can only grow things that work in certain places, climate, soil, landforms, etc. Populations also alter the landscape. So in some places where you need flat land, but there isn't any, humans have learned how to do things like terrace farming in order to make that work. We've also moved water to places where it's not naturally through irrigation. We also cut down the forest to create pastures through deforestation, and we drain wetlands to increase food production. So again, there's lots of different ways that humans alter the landscape for agricultural purposes. So what you see in this top picture is terrace farming. All of our cereal grains, rice, wheat, corn, millet, sorghum, need flat land to grow on. And so in places where it's hilly, you see these terraces where humans have actually cut out what look kind of like stair steps on the sides of hills to create flat spaces. Again, we said irrigation, moving water to places, deforestation, also slash and burn agriculture, which is usually used to clear forest, and commercial agriculture. The next section is all about the advances and impacts of the second agricultural revolution, which is all about how new technology and increased food production led to better diet, longer life, and more people available to work in factories, which should tell you already that the second agricultural revolution occurs during the Industrial Revolution. So we're talking about the late 1700s, early 1800s for the second agricultural revolution. So the second agricultural revolution has huge impacts. This is when we start to move from what is known as animate power, which are animals, to inanimate power, which are machines. So this is when we take those inventions of the Industrial Revolution, like the steam engine, and start applying it to agriculture through things like tractors. So this effect on technology is huge in terms of agriculture. We're able to produce a huge amount more food with a lot less people, which means population can grow because we have more food, and also population can do other jobs, meaning work in those factories in the city, because now we don't need as many farmers. So this chart does a good job of explaining kind of those inventions that really are what kickstart the second agricultural revolution. So we see all of these that have this same effect of being able to create more food with less people. This next section is about the third agricultural revolution, also known as the Green Revolution. So you should be able to analyze the consequences of the Green Revolution on food supply and the environment. So the Green Revolution began with the development of high yield seeds, mainly focusing on those cereal grains that we mainly consume, like rice, wheat, and maize, resulting in the increased use of chemical and mechanized farming. So basically what that means is the Green Revolution is GMOs plus chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and even more use of machinery. So there's both positives and negatives to the Green Revolution, which positives would include that we've been able to grow a lot more food and reduce hunger because of that. Negative consequences are environmental damage from this high use of chemicals and also a high use of irrigation. So chemical pesticides, herbicides, fertilizer, all of these things come with environmental damage. And the Green Revolution really gets started in the 1950s, but we're still in it today. All right, so 1950s through today, is the Green Revolution, also known as the Third Agricultural Revolution. So again, the Green Revolution, which is the third agricultural revolution, really starts around the 1950s and it involves mainly GMOs, the use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers, and the increased use of machinery. Today, not only do we have tractors, but we have things called combines. Combines, in terms of wheat production, can do basically all three stages of wheat farming, just the machine, which means we hardly need any farmers anymore because today's modern machinery can do the entire process itself. So the main positive impacts of the Green Revolution have been the fact that we've been able to grow a lot more food. Guys, since the 1950s, we've seen the world population almost triple in size. We've gone from less than 2 billion people to now almost 8 billion people. And we would not have been able to feed that amount of people without the improvements of the Green Revolution. So literally saving lives is the best impact of the Green Revolution. So higher yields, meaning we are able to grow more food on the same amount of land. We've also been able to decrease food prices in many cases because of that. So again, there's negative impacts of the Green Revolution as well. We said that the Green Revolution is things like GMOs and chemicals and more machinery. All of those things cost money. So there have been some countries that have done really well with the Green Revolution technology. India is really the best example. Mexico is also a really good example. Those countries that are kind of in the middle in terms of development, who have just enough money to be able to buy that technology of the Green Revolution, have been able to successfully use it. However, the very poor countries, like in sub-Saharan Africa, they don't have the money to buy genetically modified seeds or pesticide or machinery. And so they haven't been able to adopt these things that are part of the Green Revolution, even though they need it the most. So that is also an issue with the Green Revolution. That really concludes it for chapter 12. Make sure that you have read all of the chapter to get even more detail. And also this week, I want you guys to watch a video about the Green Revolution so that you get a bit even better understanding of this. Thank you.